Twitter, or sorry, X, is the only social media that I've personally used where someone can say, "I like pancakes," and some stranger with too much free time on their hands finds this tweet and angrily replies, "So you hate waffles?" There's a reason why so many people find this platform to be, well, shit. And yet, I can't seem to stop using it even after Elon Musk clipped this once free blue bird of its wings and caged it into darkness, perpetually trapping it in a world plagued with nudes and biobots running rampant galore. Half the reason I refuse to move is because I'm too lazy to return and set up VTuber shop in my homeland of Tumblr, the land of the queers and the Tumblr sexy men galore. And half because Twitter honestly leads to seeing some entertaining things. How else am I gonna see the tea of the week from B-Tweeter McGee over there with their worst hot takes about a situation? Speaking of terrible hot takes and tea, let's talk about a podcast group named Under the Tea that decided to self-insert themselves into a situation that, quite frankly, they didn't have any business doing. This aforementioned situation is when the VTuber Tora Karu was revealed to have committed sexual assault on an individual and was a prolific serial sexual harasser in the indie scene. I made a video about this guy if you'd like the full story, including the testimonies of many victims who spoke out, over here on my channel. And oh my god, it's the first time I get to use this thing. But just in case, here is a brief summary of the Tora situation. On March 17th, 2024, a brave VTuber named Lily speaks out about her assault caused by Tora Karu when he pinned her down on a couch and kissed her cheek against her will. Many saw her document and empowered her voice by speaking out about their own poor experiences with Tora, letting each other and the community know that his NSFW behavior was not an isolated one. Tora then makes an apology document where he takes zero accountability and tries to cash out his assets before leaving, winds up failing on both accounts, and then he essentially deletes all his platforms altogether. Supposedly for good, so he said. That all panned out around March 18th of 2024. Now, a few days later, around March 20th, 2024, when the dust was beginning to settle and many were beginning to move on with their lives, in enters Under the Tea VT, the Twitter handle for the podcast group Under the Tea. Their little group of clowns are conveniently named here in their pinned tweet: Luminous Cove, the mermaid VTuber, Mizuhana Oshibe, the salty sea nymph, and Mama Akko, the octopus who became a mom. Or that's what their bios say. Also, just as a reminder, please do not harass these individuals. In fact, do not acknowledge their existence at all. Let's not give these three any crumb of attention or clout. It's better off that way. And we'll see why very shortly. We'll dive more into who these three people are in a bit. For now, let's see what terrible takes they've made on their jointly shared podcast Twitter account about the more serious Tora Karu situation.
Over the course of the night, we will be adding to this thread about the Tora drama and the people using it for clout. To start, contrary to what some think, we agree Tora is a creep and a sex pest. Where we disagree is how far he's gone and how many actual victims there are. At current, there is one known victim and one bad action. Tora, during an event where he met up with an of-age fan for a sexual encounter, ended up turning them down. Later, while said fan was admittedly mad at him for no explainable reason and context other than the fact she didn't get to sleep with him, he sat on her lap and kissed her cheek. She defines this event as pinning her down, and she might supposedly feared she might be SA'd. This might fit the bill for harassment, but it would be very difficult to get that through a court. While people are entitled to their feelings, not all feelings are valid or logical. Given all context, none of her feelings about this event are logical. She was, by legal and moral definitions, never sexually assaulted or abused. His behavior was creepy, but never criminal. To put this into perspective, this situation is almost an exact one-to-one of the pro-Jared scandal. His ultimate crime here was sexting fans, but those fans were completely willing.
Okay, there's a lot of things here we need to dissect. First of all, you know it's going to be bad when they not only dismiss how many victims there are by outright disbelieving the numbers and claims, but they also say that people who spoke out about their negative experiences with a serial harasser and an assaulter is just for clout-chasing. Really? You really think people want to air out their dirty laundry, exposing private DMs and personal real situations so openly in the public simply for clout? Most genuine people truly do not want this kind of attention, because in a way, there do exist some people who tend to remember situations as, oh, you're that one victim, rather than identify them as their own unique individual. Of course, we do have the rare cases where some people do lie for the sake of clout, but I'm not some novice and this ain't my first rodeo in observing Controversy Town. In regards to the Tora situation, I truly believe each and every single individual who spoke out about his behavior in my last video. Second, imagine making a Twitter thread just to call out other people and claim they are liars and clout chasing when you, in fact, are quite literally clout chasing, because let's be real. 2 days after Tora Karu deactivated, everyone was already moving on from the situation, until this group decided to bash in through the wall like the world's most terrible Kool-Aid man and shit all over like they ate a bottle of laxatives. So if I had to say who the real clout chaser is, it is this podcast group, not the people who spoke out just to support Lily and give testimony about Tora Karu's disgusting behavior. Third, this format is absolute dog shit. This bright red highlighted white text on a black background is obnoxious. At least do me the courtesy of writing it in a Google Doc and screenshotting that before giving me this pile of dung, but okay, fine. Now, in their actual quote-unquote hot take, they go on to dismiss Lily's claims that she was SA'd, even going so far to bring up it'd be difficult to get through a court. First of all, are you guys lawyers? If not, then shut the fuck up. Stop spouting crap as if you're a know-it-all just because you watched some other armchair drama queen spout on about what's legal and not legal. If you're not a lawyer, you don't know the law to its absoluteness. So kindly sit down and shut the F up about legal shit. Also, in Lily's document, none of it was about taking Tora to court or even insinuating she was going to take him to court. The only court this document ever stood on is the court of public opinion, which doesn't need any goddamn lawyer to decide whether something is morally right or wrong. This podcast group also does that fun, toxic phrase of, not all feelings are valid or logical. Ah, yes, I see you guys took that from page 2 of the handbook, How to Be an Abuser 101, where invalidating someone's feelings automatically means you win every argument because fuck your opinions, am I right? Like, come on, really? They then continue with, by legal and moral definitions, she was never SA'd or abused. Hey, bestie, here's a pro tip. You can't decide whether someone remembers and feels a certain way about a situation. And Tora himself has corroborated the timeline of events. He admitted that he got on top of Lily and kissed her cheek. Lily did not like that and froze up and was afraid. By all means, that is what I would consider assault, because I know for sure if anyone did that to me, I'd be paralyzed and afraid too. I don't like people touching me, let alone I can't imagine the fear from having another person on top of me when there is no consent that led to his unprompted action of suddenly getting on top of her. And again, criminal here doesn't matter because this stuff was never claimed to be going to the court in the first place. This is not at all equatable to the pro-Jared situation because in this case, Lily's experiences were validated to be true by Tora himself, and that there was definitely no explicit consent and Lily has every right to feel the way she does about that terrible situation she was forced in. And as for the other victims who spoke out, there were varying degrees of how far Tora went with his NSFW comments towards them and how they responded back, but ultimately it's not up to us to dismiss them of their valid claims. Their next tweet then goes on to say, now on to the Vtubers using this situation for attention and clout chasing. We're going to start with the clout chaser, Zenith. Zenith had entirely friendly and consensual interactions with Tora, but leaked all their conversations anyway solely for attention. Most of the time, they'd simply leave out key details of their conversations, only to admit to them in replies, in order to better garner attention. Their first post claimed Taro sent them weird kissing ASMR audios completely unsolicited, which is not part of Taro's content or overall MO when flirting. They later admitted in the replies that the two were discussing ASMR content, and she was asked beforehand if she wanted some from him, which she openly accepted. She later admitted that all of their contact was consensual and she saw nothing wrong with it, but she felt abused because he did it with other people other than her, despite no mentions of them ever being in a relationship or exclusive to each other. Her posts are solely to get attention and pour gasoline on a raging fire. I'm suffering. These people literally can't read. First, they assume Zenith is leaving out key details, but if you happen to go and read all this yourself, I don't think Zenith left out any relevant details. Second, they said taro. Who the f is taro? Man's not a fucking delicious purple root vegetable. This guy's a frickin' tiger. You know they sip that low quality tea that melts your brain away because they can't even remember to type the guy's name accurately. Twice. Anyway, they say Tora sending weird kissing ASMR audios is not part of his content or MO when flirting. This is false. Tora did do ASMR content on Twitch. I had a few clips and you can see them in the Tora video. I'll spare you all here because a lot of y'all were really grossed out to the point of being sick. He also did ask for audios from various other people who spoke out, and I imagine he wasn't a stranger to giving audios back to reciprocate, though admittedly this is speculation on my part. But in my opinion, if he was sexting people, it is not unreasonable to assume he would offer such things in return if given the chance. These three also assume Zenith openly accepted, but in reality, Tora actually only asked her vaguely if he could send her something. She had no idea what it was or what it was going to contain. She even quote retweeted their tweet and brings up a good point. Help! LMAO! I'm not sure how to explain this to people, but me saying okay to an audio recording of Tora was not me giving him permission to make out with my eardrums, and clearly he's had a history of taking advantage of these types of situations to squeeze out every bit of gratification. If someone asks, can I send a pic? And you say yes, then they send a dick pic. Is that okay? Because technically you consented, and a dick pic is still a pic. Like, no, the fuck? Get out of here! And so true. If you don't know what it is exactly that you're going to receive, you are allowed to be displeased or unhappy or angry if you get something you weren't expecting when that thing turns out to be offensive. Also, this entire paragraph here is, what the hell are you talking about? There is nothing in Zenith's tweets that ever insinuated that she was upset at Tora because they weren't e-dating. She never gave him any indication she was romantically interested in the guy, and even confronted him to tell him to stop telling her I love yous and to cut it out with the audio stuff because she was uncomfortable. Are y'all okay for misremembering? I think you should get that noggin checked out. Just saying, you might be missing a brain cell in there, or a whole brain. Anyway, the third tweet of their thread continues.
On the other end of abusing the situation, we have people who will piggyback off the issue to invent their own cancel story. There we have Akarui, who uses the Tora situation to try and convince people who sided against him to help her cancel someone they don't like. Their posts are pretty cut and dry, but I think it's good to show how people utilize call-out posts like this to harm others and to get attention. In their story, they were 100% consensual in this situation. They were of age and with another adult, but in desperation to ride the waves of accusations against Tora, they try to accuse someone named Smooshified of being a pedo and an abuser simply for being older than them. This is also an extremely useful example because much of the evidence against Tora is also showing him being creepy, rather than evidence of any actual wrongdoing. So about this tweet, I personally haven't seen anything about the Akarui and Smunch situation. I think both of these are smaller creators, and the Akarui person seems to have deleted their account at the time of writing this script. What we do know is that both were adults, albeit with a noticeable wide age gap, and Smunch admitted to staying in their lane from now on. I'll leave these two be since I'm not well informed enough on their situation to give a proper answer, but I will say that this kind of document call out after another document call out gets big stuff is definitely not uncommon on Twitter either. There are definitely people who will try to ride a popular situation for their benefit. I won't name names unlike this podcast group, but I have seen at least 2 people try to cancel someone for being a predator or sex pest, but it turned out their stories were deliberately twisted to leave out vital information, such as evidence of initiating sexual encounters and both being adults, and it was isolated just to mostly between them two. So, lying by leaving out vital information for clout does happen, I'm not denying that. But in this situation regarding Tora and his actions, that's not quite the same either. The evidence against Tora was not simply he's just being creepy. No, this man full-on made unsolicited NSFW comments towards dozens, and even tried getting personal information out of them such as their location, their name, their pictures, despite many showing reluctance for everything. None of these are just creepy, it's flat-out harassment, sexual, and otherwise. Full stop. Their fourth tweet continues. On the more middle of the road, we have the I'm just adding to your story people.
People who have nothing of value to add to the conversation and no proof to actually speak of, but still chime in regardless and try to force it to fit. One of these people is Miri Mizuhiki. All of her evidence is consensual conversations between the two where she constantly matches his energy and flirts back. She attempts to rewrite their history, claiming she was just repressing the creepiness of it, despite always participating in it. This is a common issue among many of the detractors. They have turned their space into a hypersexual and very flirtatious one, but will utilize their own behavior as examples as why other people are in the wrong. This is not an example of Tora's continuing to be a creep, but rather Tora and the girls he spent time with being consensually overly sexual. This will apply to 90% of the current accusations against him. At the time of writing this script, Miri has deleted her tweet about the Tora situation, which to me signifies she spoke what she wanted to and now wants to move on. So I'll keep this brief for her sake so that she can heal. Regarding Miri's statements, she made her thread to speak out about how guilty she felt for considering him harmless at the time. She never once claimed to be rewriting their history, but just felt guilty for associating with him positively and potentially perpetuating his good image at the time despite their interactions seeming off in private. All she wanted to do was to add on that his NSFW behavior was not an isolated incident. That is it. You, the podcast group, really twisted these people's narratives into something it isn't. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm all for not considering yourself a journalist, as I also don't think I'm a journalist. But I, for one, don't stand for people misunderstanding or deliberately twisting situations because they want to perpetuate a more suitable narrative for themselves that often turns out to be edgy and victim-blaming or dismissive. You guys are the reason many think quote-unquote drama is ugly, because your group takes the ugliest parts of a situation and try to paint it as the one and only truth through your twisted lens. The only silver lining to this situation right now is that this podcast platform reach is limited and isolated and only appeals towards an audience of equally twisted individuals. Anyway, continuing on to their 5th tweet, and don't worry, we're almost done with this tweet thread.
In a similar vein to the last accuser, we have someone openly admitting it was consensual and they didn't see an issue with it at the time, but now they've decided it's sexual assault. Amphi threw her hat into the ring as well. Honestly, much like the last few entries, there isn't much to analyze about her allegation. She shows more evidence of Tora being sexually forward with her, but she never actually shows him crossing a line. The first message she gives shows her setting a boundary, but no message after shows him crossing it. Only more sexually forward tweets which she said were fine. The messages are also specifically cropped to only show Tora's side and none of the context around it. But most importantly, she claims she only just realized this was sexual harassment. It's very common for V-tweeters to seek attention this way, by just recently discovering a problem they had never seen before, and it will also be a common theme with Tora's accusers. I swear, every time I read these people's clownery, I feel a bit of my faith in humanity fading away because there really is no way there are people this stupid, right? There's no way you have people who literally can't read for shit and still think they have literacy skills to make scathing clapbacks when they honestly haven't had the mental capacity to comprehend things properly, right? Ugh. Okay. About Amphi's tweets. What the F do you mean she never shows him crossing a line? Bro, she literally said her boundary is that she's not comfortable with sharing videos or pictures. Then Tora tries to joke, but not actually joke, he wants nudes. And then oversteps that clear boundary a few months later by saying she has a DSL and literally asks for a crumb of a pussy or titty pic. Like, huh? He's clearly crossing the boundary. And again, like I said in the last video, the VTuber scene as a whole typically tended to be over-sexual at the time of 2022 and 2023. Random ooh-tee-hee haha sex tweets were considered relatively normal at the time, even if they were a nuisance. But again, Tora had clout around this time. He had influence with his large number of followers, and unfortunately with the power of influence, those with the smaller platforms tend to think that, hey, since no one's called him out on his bad behavior, it might just be an off thing and therefore it's not something to bring up in public out of fear of backlash. It sucks, but that's kind of what happens to a lot of big creators who wind up turning out to be horny freaks later down the line. If a victim realizes down the line that they got harassed after they processed that they were clearly not into whatever was going on at the time, then shut the hell up and let them come to terms with their trauma.
Sometimes you don't realize you were abused until after you're free from the situation and in a safe space where you can process what happened and begin the healing process. And finally, we get to their last tweet on the initial shitfest of a thread. Tweet 6 says,
These allegations are repeats of the same information. Not one person has come forward with something to consider outside of the original post. Everyone repeats that they were involved in overly sexual, consensual flirting with Tora, and now they're revoking consent a year later.
And I don't think that's true, because some people have just flat out denied his interactions in the first place, with evidence portraying so. Tora did this unprompted to literally dozens of people and was, effectively, a sex pest. Also, he assaulted Lily. Let's not forget that happened. Of course, the response that this podcast group received for their inflammatory tweets were, well, to say the least, a lot of them called them out on their bullshit. One such example is Cho, who speaks out with the following. This is the last thing I'll say about the situation. You don't get to tell anyone how to feel about what he's done. You don't get to weigh in, give your 2 cents, because guess what? It's worthless. I trusted him. I thought our friendship was based on genuine interest in companionship, and it wasn't. I opened up to him about incredibly sensitive and traumatic experiences in my life, and I trusted him to be different, and he wasn't. I cried to him about a similar incident, a similar betrayal of my trust. I thought he was supportive. He wasn't. And I assure you, that is the case for many others coming out about their experiences. So once more, you don't get to give your own opinion. You don't get to offer your own advice, your own perspective. You don't get to boil this down into VTuber drama. I desperately hope your podcast sinks to the bottom of the ocean where it belongs. Fuck you and fuck off. And I agree. Many trusted Tora and looked up to him, overlooking his lewd behavior, only to find out he was actually reprehensible to many, assaulted one, and never learned from his behavior. It's not just drama to speak lightly on, to belittle victims like these shitty podcast people have. It's awful, and I made my initial video to document the situation, so it doesn't become forgotten if Tora ever decides to return in the future. But if you thought this podcast group would sit silently while people responded with dissatisfaction at their ridiculous tweet thread, you'd be wrong. They argued a lot, and pretty actively too. Even Lily herself spoke out from her side account. Lily says, I've been made aware that this isn't your first rodeo of being demeaning to others and defending abusers. Genuinely disheartening behavior. Hold this. L. And the Under the Tea podcast responds with, well, I'm just gonna put this here on the screen. And for the listeners only here, let's just say I've played more than enough Limbus Company to truly understand the meaning of gaslighting a victim. Like, holy shit. Did you just tell the victim they were actually the abuser in the situation? Did you just actually just say that? What the fuck? Guys, I literally cannot emphasize to you how much this behavior was just repulsive, absolutely batshit insane, absolutely monkey wild crazy to see 100% actual serious bullshit. I've never seen gaslighting so fucking blatant that the whole wheelbarrow of dung just caught on fire. Like, holy hell. And if you think they stopped there, oh no they didn't. Lily posted a response which I sadly didn't save. But if I recall correctly, it was about a Google search for is a kiss on the cheek sexual assault, to which the SA help hotline was available. The fact these podcast people quadrupled down with that a kiss on the cheek when being trapped without consent is not considered SA is actually so wild to me. These people have never had the unfortunate position in their lives to be taken advantage of or have anyone emotionally traumatize and scar them. And wow, what's that like? Must be nice to be an ignorant, uncaring, untraumatized bastard, eh? If someone traps you and touches you anywhere without your consent, it's assault. Full stop. They, of course, received a lot of backlash. They then said this.
We're not upset at anyone. We're simply pointing out how it's become a coordinated harassment campaign on several fronts. We are perfectly fine using people's abuse as content. We are perfectly fine using people's abuse as content. Huh. That explained a lot, actually. They shortly deleted this tweet and tried clarifying they meant that they were being abused and that they'll use that as content, but that requires a little bit of mental gymnastics.
considering their whole content is based on content farming off gossip and spewing hate takes amongst each other and their small community with conservative-leaning ideologies. I'm not surprised at all if it turned out they also meant it literally. In addition, they fully intended to use this backlash for their upcoming podcast episode that was to air later that same day. And I wouldn't be surprised if their "we are fine using people's abuse as content" tweet came from Mama Akko, quote, "your favorite anti-bully." By the way, before you mistake anti-bully as being literally an anti of bullying, nope. Akko often seems to taunt and make fun of people who are not in the know of what it means to be an anti-bully, so it's definitely a keyword for something. I have my suspicions, but let's just say they're very unapologetic for their, quite frankly, deplorable behavior. Anyway, while we're on the topic of these three individuals and their behavior, they are definitely flocks of a certain kind of feather, if you get my drift. I only bring this up to demonstrate that their pattern of behavior stems from their more conservative views, and so it won't be the only time they'll be, well, bigots. Upcoming warning for potentially triggering topics, as there are clips of these guys saying some truly heinous things. This includes topics such as mentions of lolicons, slur usage, and discrimination against non-binary folk. These clips are also in terrible Twitter compressed quality because I ain't giving these guys no views on their main channels. F that. If you wish to skip this section, go to the timestamp here. With that out of the way, let's begin with evidence of the following. These people defend lolicons, which you can see in their tweets here. Lumi refers to the regular normal masses as antis, and Akko just straight up says they defend lolicons. Mizu has been suspended from Twitter for some time, but pretty sure they also defended lolicons as well because I had their ass muted for a long time, and I mute anyone whose opinions I dislike. Their arguments are pretty standard, which is free speech and fiction does not equate to reality, so therefore lolicons cannot be pedos. While I believe fiction does not equate to reality, simply because I like to consume dark fiction, I ain't gonna be here defending lolicons. I think people who like that stuff are hella nasty. Keep that shit away from me. It's nothing that requires a debate or defending their disgusting interest because, quite frankly, if I hate something, I'm just gonna hate and move on. And from observations, arguing semantics with these kinds of people never go anywhere because they always have to come out right or on top. And in my opinion, and using my full ability of free speech granted to me by America, I think your interest in lollies is disgusting and you can royally fuck off. In my opinion, people who like lollies are all walking red flags, and I sure as hell wouldn't trust them near any children alone. No ifs and buts are gonna change my mind, and neither is my singular opinion gonna change theirs. Also, if anyone tries claiming that I am a lolly, or god forbid lolly-coded, just because I am flatter than a cutting board, then I am so sorry to tell you this, but you have chronic incel-itis. I'm afraid that if you refuse to touch grass and see how varied real adult women are in real life, it is unfortunately terminal, and you're doomed to be forever alone, never having known another's touch. So sorry for your loss. Continuing on, they use slur words, particularly as an insult to others.
So I think Crimbo is a fucking retard for having this take. And I said so, and then he blocked me. But
he's gonna ruin himself.
Oh, he is.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the thing that always boggles my mind is you've got these people that like to be moral facts. All right, and I can say that, chat. It's my word that I get to say. People like to go out there and be moral facts on the internet. Say all this stuff about how morally upright of a character they are.
I think the usage of slurs is uncreative and tends to be inflammatory just for the sake of it. People who use, say, the R word tend to do so because they say it's just another word for idiot and ooh, free speech, America. Instead of using a slur like the world's shittiest synonym, you can be way more creative, such as, I'm surprised I can't use you in my salad when you've got no activity going on in your brain. Or, I'm surprised you weren't given over to stem cell research after your mother discovered she was pregnant. But oh, that's right, you wouldn't develop any brain cells anyway. Like, come on. Is it because that's too intellectual and creative? Too many words for that single-digit IQ? Seriously. They are also discriminatory against non-binary folks.
Look, I'm gonna be the ass in the room. He is. I'm gonna be the ass in the room, though. And I'm gonna say, I've never understood non-binary, not like I don't understand where it comes from. I don't understand how people act when they say they're non-binary. Because there isn't like it's not like being trans necessarily, where there's a specific like male and female look to model yourself after. With non-binary, there is no non-binary look to model yourself after. So people that say they're non-binary tend to do really stupid stuff. And I'm just going to tell you guys that, because somebody needs to tell some of you, you do really stupid stuff after you identify as non-binary, and you kind of end up making yourselves look like idiots.
Well, the thing that I've always never understood is, like, binary means 0 or 1, like, you know, male or female, you know, whatever. If you're in the middle and you're nothing, does that mean gender, like, legitimately, I am genuinely curious, does that just mean gender blob? That's all I don't understand it. And the more I try, I don't.
I've always had the opinion that non-binary just on its face doesn't really make sense. Because you're not trying to look like something specific. So the only thing it's really doing for you is the label. So it's like, why is the label that important for you? Like, I need a legitimate explanation for why you need the label above all else. Because I don't think it works.
Non-binary with androids. The code androids execute as binary.
I think a lot of people agree with that to like some degree, and I think people are kind of scared to acknowledge that.
It's like, to be honest, and this is just from my observations, it's like, unlike you two, I haven't had, you know, gender dysphoria, but I do have friends who are non-binary or transgender. And it's like, some people that I know that did identify as non-binary in the past, it seems like that they just wanted a middle ground before they decided if they wanted to transition or not. It's like that safe area where they don't have to commit with like hormone therapy and stuff to get that ideal look. Yeah. It's to see where they want to go before they fully commit.
But because I agree with that, but I have a problem with that on its face, because you're basically just saying, I care more about how society perceives me than anything else. Because at the end of the day, that's all you're doing with non-binary, is you're saying, I don't want society to perceive me as male or female. It's like, okay, why do you care? Just be you.
That's something
I don't understand why you're so desperate to have society specifically acknowledge a new label for you.
That's something I've never really understood. It's just like, okay, you're never going to impress society. Society is like, the normal society that we live, not the society that lives online, because I feel like a lot of people get their opinions from what they see online. The society that's in normal life doesn't give a shit, alright? If you go to some random guy that is trying to sell his wares and tell him all about yourself, he doesn't give a shit. You know what he gives a shit about? Making profit so that he can feed his family. His family is who he gives a shit about. He's probably never going to see you again, or maybe you'll be a regular. It doesn't matter. He doesn't give a shit about you. So you shouldn't seek the only people you should seek approval from is you, your boss, maybe your parents, unless you don't like them, and your significant other. Other than that, I really don't care if people outside randomly care about my life decisions. They don't need to know.
In my opinion, I find that the VTuber Funky Frogbait counters a good chunk of their points with this clip here.
The implication that the transition of a non-binary person is simply an adjustment of grammar ignores the intense body dysphoria and feelings of isolation in our heavily gendered society that many non-binary people experience. In fact, many non-binary people go through gender-affirming surgeries just as invasive as Kelly.
And in addition, Akko and Mizuhana seem really hung up about caring about why someone's non-binary, and are making flawed assumptions that these non-binary folks are telling their life story to a random stranger for approval. From personal experience with interacting with non-binary friends, no one's going around to random people demanding they respect their non-binary status and pronouns and giving them their life story. Most people are actually, would you know it, normal people when it comes to socializing. Contrary to what the right would have you believe, most people aren't trying to shove their gender identities down your throat unprompted. Whoa, what a revelation. I find it incredibly ironic that these people are saying no one gives a fuck about if you're non-binary, And yet here they are, trying to debate why someone's non-binary or not. I think the only ones who's pressed about the situation is you. Quite frankly, it's not hard to just respect someone's pronouns. Non-binaries are non-binaries just because they don't feel like they fit in any particular gender of either male or female. So let them be who they want to be if it means they feel more comfortable being inside their own skin. It's not rocket science, it just takes a bit of open-mindedness. You'd think someone with no brain cells would have a lot of open mind, but I suppose not. Ultimately, these people with their ideologies are just not my thing at all. But continuing on, later that evening, they would delete their entire thread and replies and release this half-baked apology, even going so far as to tag Lily once more after having the audacity to call her an abuser.
An apology for Lily. Hello everyone, this is a joint statement by Mizuhana and Mama Ako. We would like to sincerely apologize to Lily for our insensitive statements the last few days. It was never our intention to cause her any harm or to dismiss the feelings of the victims affected by Tora Karu. We try to hold ourselves to a higher standard than other VTubers when it comes to talking about sensitive issues, and in this situation, we fell woefully short. We would also like to apologize for anyone who got the impression we were defending Tora Karu. We believed and still firmly believe he is an abuser and a manipulator. We hope Lily can move on from Tora's abuse and our own insensitive statements towards her. We will be respecting the wishes of the victims, and as such, this will be the last time we discuss this issue at all in any form. With peace and love, Mama Ako, Mizuhana Oshibe. This apology rings really hollow and honestly feels disingenuous and performative, especially when you compare it to what they say in a clip from their podcast later that same day.
I am not admitting wrongdoing at all.
No.
I am just taking the blame for what I said, and I am maintaining my opinion.
Pretty much. And I will say as well, the things that I tweeted on my account, and I will say that anything posted on the under the T account was not posted by me.
Nope.
But it was approved by me. I will say it was approved. All of the tweets, we all collectively approve.
They admit that they're unapologetic and that they also simultaneously approve the tweets, yet didn't post the tweets. Something isn't adding up there, and it's probably because they're trying to fail at saving face and hope no one catches their bullshit. But nah, I see your stupidity for what it is. But Lily is a much better person than I am because she ultimately accepted the tweet apology, albeit reluctantly since she just wants to move on and heal, which is valid. Personally though, I'm a petty bitch, so that's why I'm making this video to talk about this. What you'll notice in both their apology letter and clip is that the third member, Luminous Cove, is nowhere to be seen in it. That is because Lumi had this to say the next morning. This is my only statement on this shit situation. All the other posts relating to the podcast before this have been approved by the group. The last few days I have not been paying attention to Twitter much since I have IRL things and work to worry about. I told Akko and Mizu on Monday and Tuesday I did not want to cover the Toro situation on stream at all. I did not join the podcast last night as most may have noticed, which was due to a mix of tummy problems and not wanting to deal with it. I am sorry for my co-host's absolute stupidity. I will make sure they do not fuck up again. I am also sorry that you had to go through this situation at all. I hope you can heal through this. Lumi. Personally, I think all the other posts relating to the podcast before this have been approved by the group is a little suspect, but Lumi appears to not be involved in the active gaslighting attempts. Also, her next tweet says, I'm just gonna focus on my own personal VTuber stuff. I'm done. Personal friendships ain't breaking because of shit I wasn't involved in. Mama Akko also tweets out later that day, I have to think about some things. Thought about it, getting off Twitter for now. Around this time, Lumi went private and the Under the Tea podcast went private as well. The podcast also had their We Get Cancelled video privated shortly after this debacle. But at the time of writing the script, it is unfortunately back. Both Lumi and the podcast Twitter unprivated, and the podcast Twitter said this. Afternoon, little kettles. Big thanks for all the support over the last few days. We just want you guys to know both the podcast and our streams will continue next week. We're not quitting on you guys, we just need a little time to regroup and relax. We love you, tea sippers. Which, ew. Not only did they not break their friendship at all, it seems, but I kind of wished these people disbanded their terrible tea party altogether. If you ask me though, absolutely do not give these guys any attention. Do not watch, do not follow, do not interact with their content at all. Don't give these guys the attention they so desperately crave, as they certainly wanted a crumb of clout from trying to call everyone else a clout chaser during the Toro situation. already got their infamous attention on Twitter alright, but now all of the sensible parts of regular VTuber Twitter will know these three are not to be trusted with their poor opinions and takes. Because, ultimately, I do believe there is a good way and a bad way to handle topics that range from petty drama to more serious controversies. I like to think that the way I handle topics is good, and that I show evidence with a little bit of commentary, and I usually try to see both sides, even if ultimately I choose one to side with. After all, I am a Nephilim, half angel and half demon. And unfortunately, a stinky Libra. So if anyone's all about balance and good and evil and stuff, I think I have that pretty down locked. But a bad way to go about this discussion is honestly being too gossipy and letting too much of your personal beliefs and opinions cloud your judgment to the point that you'll even twist the narrative to fit your skewed view and not really giving the other side a fair chance. If you manage to believe so wholeheartedly a victim turned out to be an abuser, you're definitely fucked and you should reevaluate your morals. But you know, some people like cheap trash like that, and that's just disappointing. For me though, I will do myself a favor and keep the shit out of my feed for good. Sayonara, bitches. So that's that. Unfortunately, these three seem to be back and probably with zero change. Editing staff here, and I just wanted to say that, yeah, they are back and they are very unapologetic and unrepentant. They even have a whole opening scene that is with a song with the Weatherman, and they basically just took a billion screenshots of every hater and every person that has criticized them, so they clearly relish in the hate. It's funny though, they often go, ew, V-tweeters, we're so much better than V-tweeters. But they often get into more drama than I've seen from a regular person over on Twitter by posting out shitty takes. The irony and hypocrisy is real, but what's new with these kinds of people? Anyway, if you haven't yet, feel free to check out my video on Tora Karu for the full scope of the context. Otherwise, feel free to comment your thoughts. See you next time. Keep it vibing, everyone. Bye!